I've been lifting kettlebells a very long time. Since 2009, I started training with them, and I've been competing since 2012. And one thing we're all trying to do as sport athletes is, well, one, perfect our form, but form also evolves over time. Form also evolves as you mature as an athlete, right? So where I was lacking in the beginning and things I filled in has given me the ability to adapt my technique and take advantage of certain strengths that I didn't have before. For example, my legs have gotten a lot more powerful. I can do a lot more with my legs where I used to have a very shallow dip and fast launch. I can slow my reps down a little bit. I can have a deeper dip, a bigger launch, and a deeper under squat in my jerk. And that allows me to kind of slow the pace, slow the movement down. It doesn't spike my heart rate as much, right? So we're always evolving our technique. We're always kind of looking for ways to be more efficient or really utilize all the attributes we have. So I definitely want to look at my technique each week and find out where I need to improve, find out, what things I can do to be a little more efficient. Now, I've trained for a long time. My technique is really quite sound, but I'm rusty. Just like anything, if you haven't done it in a while, which, like I said, I had about a year and a half layoff where I wasn't training at all and I was not treating my body well either. So I'm still really beginning to rebuild at this point. So technique, just like anything, has to be rebuilt. So I want to take a look at some of my sets and take a look at a couple major issues that I currently have. All right. So the first thing I want to show is actually from my very first workout that's on this channel. It's the very first video I posted. This is my first set of my first workout, and a couple things I want to point out here. I really want to point out a technique problem I have with my knees, specifically knees and hips, in two different positions. And that's going to be in rack position and when I lock out after the jerk. One thing you need to look for in kettlebell sport is positions of relaxation, points of stillness. The reason for that is everything is accumulating over time. Everything is very momentum based, right? So the way you add momentum, the way you add power is incremental, right? There's a little power pop in the jerk. There's a little power pop in the clean, right? But that builds over time, right? We want to be putting massive effort into these motions. We want them succinct and quick, and that builds. And the thing to counterpunch that is how well you can relax in every position, in the rack, overhead, as you backswing, right? The less tension you have, the more relaxed you are, the more you can conserve energy, and maybe even in the beginning, straight up counterpunch the effort you just put into the motion parts of the rep or the effort yielding parts of the rep. So let's take a look at one of the major mistakes. Now, there's plenty of things wrong with my lifting right now, but I want to kind of pick on a couple things to work on each week, work on them, try to get a little bit better. All right, so see here. Here I am. I have the sound off right now, but like I said, let's pay attention to my knees and my quads. The contrast is not good. I know, I'm filming into a light source, and this, I'm not Stanley Kubrick or anything. This is just really poor filming ability, but here we go. Okay, so we clean the bells and rack position. Now, all right, I went immediately. I like to my first rep come out of the gate right away. So technically there's no serious problem here. We'll see it in the next reps, but I like to get the first rep overhead, give myself as much time that first minute to settle in as possible. So get one rep out of the way. Okay, but here, you can see my quads are still tense. If you can see the quad outline here, even with my pale skin in contrast, that's not good. That's especially not good, right? Really, right here, I need to be more relaxed. The second issue is when I get overhead, pop, quads are locked. All right, I know I paused it. Do they relax? No, never. All right, still locked. That one, it's actually my left quad actually did relax a little overhead. Not that time though. All right, let's do one more just to be sure. That one, relaxation, again in the left leg, not in the right. All right. So, I mean, you can go back and you can look. All right. But that's one of the issues I'm seeing. So what does this mean? Well, overhead, I need to take a little bit longer, which is fine for me. There's no reason for me to rush. Holding those weights over my head is not hard. Even in this stage of training, I can hold those weights overhead all day. All right. So take a little bit more time at the top of the repetition. All right. Really make sure the quads are relaxed. In terms of that, I just got to think about it. It's got to be a mental point. I don't think, practice to do that. On the other hand, I do need practice with the rack position. So unfortunately, while it's the most glaring and the most damaging technique error that I have currently, it's not going to change right away. Currently, after sitting on my ass for so long, and I'm usually a very mobile human being, it's one of my advantages as a lifter. I currently have poor thoracic mobility. I'm having that worked on manually by a very good physical therapist, and I'm also doing not enough stretching, but it's something I'm going to be focusing more on to help build that mobilization. Also, my anterior hips. I'm going to say most kettlebell lifters, kettlebell lifters have great anterior hip flexibility, but I think most of them need even more, especially when, I hate to say it, but a lot of people abuse a lifting belt in competition. I'm not going to point fingers or anything like that, but you're not supposed to rest on a lifting belt, and just about every competitor does. Anyway, I'm not going to get into those logistics, but I don't use a belt for a lot of reasons. Maybe I'll do a video on belts, but for the short of it now, I don't use a belt. I don't find it comfortable. It causes more issues than it solves. It does create a nice shelf for you to sit on, but I do not use a belt, so I have to have a very good rack position. So I have to really work on the anterior hip flexibility, specifically those first big hip flexors, your iliacus and psoas. I have to really work on my rectus femoris. That's your middle quad muscle that spans the hip, opening those up, getting that forward hip positioning. And secondly, thoracic mobility. It's not that my thoracic mobility is bad, but when you're in rack position, right, you have to be able to breathe. And, right, if I'm sitting here and I breathe into my stomach, into my chest, right, that's no good, right? Because I'm going to move my elbows and kind of push myself off. What I want to do is breathe, and you can kind of see my back here into my back. And as you fatigue, as you clean, just trying to relax in that positioning, if your back is stiff, your spine doesn't have that kyphotic curvature to accommodate those breaths, you kind of suffocate yourself. So what I'm going to do in my technique, spend a little more time overhead. Take an extra breath there. Number one, hey, then I don't have to worry about suffocating in rack. I can get a little more oxygen overhead. That'll slow my repetitions down. I think it'll improve my heart rate a little. Secondly, I have to add anterior hip stretching. All right, so that's going to be another focal point in these coming weeks. For the overhead position, I just have to focus on it, take that extra breath. That's my correction. Now for the hip positioning, I have to add homework. So I'm going to have to do some form of static stretching, PNF stretching to the quads and those hip flexor muscles and I have to do it regularly and just help build that. There's one other kettlebell drill you can do that I may or may not add. We'll see how I feel. And that's rack holds. Simply holding the heavy bells in rack position for durations. I'd add them for sure, but I want to see how my soft tissue feels. Sitting in that position under load for long periods of time does tend to bang up my forearms, palms a little bit. So before I add that, I'm going to see how I feel in the first workout and then see about adding them maybe 2 times this week. All right? So, hey, not just the lifting. I want to go back and look at the technique. As important as good progression is in terms of numbers, in terms of pacing, in terms of training volume, the technique, is paramount, just like in anything. So we want to kind of focus on all these elements and bring them all together. All right. So that was me picking my technique apart today. And we'll continue to do this weekly and see, how much we can improve and if we're improving. And we need to, seek professional help beyond this.